Hola.
Hello, this call is being translated.
Abuela, listen to what my phone can do.
Abuela, escucha lo que mi teléfono puede hacer.
¡Wow! Ahora dime sobre tu novia nueva.
Wow, now tell me about this new girlfriend.
Huh?
Tú sabes lo que dije.
You know what I said.
Language is no longer a barrier thanks to Live Translate with Galaxy AI on Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Learn more at Samsung.com. Samsung account login required. Calls must be made using the native Samsung dialer.
It's primary season, and while some high-profile elections may be getting lots of coverage, local elections have much more of an impact on our day-to-day lives. Ada County commissioners, for instance, oversee things like how tax revenue is spent, or even get to decide whether or not a library district should be dissolved. Today on City Cast Boise, we're going to break down who is running for these important positions. It's Monday, May 13th. I'm Lindsay Van Allen, and this is what Boise's talking about. Today, I've got executive producer Frankie Barnhill to take us on a deep dive into these races. Thank you for joining me, Frankie.
Yeah, election season coming up. We're excited to talk about these really important races in Ada County.
Absolutely. Let's jump right in. The Ada County Commission has 2 seats up for election this year. What districts are those seats in?
So, yeah, there are 3 seats on the Ada County Commission, and 2 of the 3 are open this year. The one that covers District 1 and the other covers District 3. District 1, just to give a general sense of where District 1 covers, so the candidates need to live in this district. That's like borders with Highway 55 on the west. It's east into the foothills, north into the foothills, and then east to Warm Spring, Garden City, downtown, parts of the Bench up to Overland. So really a good chunk of Boise, but also some of Eagle, Hidden Springs, some unincorporated areas too. So that's District 1. And then District 3 is much more rural, covers a lot more space, and is like from Canyon County line east to Elmore County. It includes southern parts of Meridian and Boise, lots of unincorporated rural parts of the county. And yeah, it's an important note, too, that this is interesting. It's kind of weird and wonky, but District 1, the candidates are up for a 2-year term, and District 3, it's a 4-year term.
Interesting. Yeah, thank you for highlighting that for everyone. And I also wanted to highlight that these are countywide races. So regardless of what district you live in, the voters in Ada County will vote for all of the candidates or the candidates in both districts. So even if you live in District 1, you still choose a candidate from District 3 too. This is for everyone who lives in the county.
That's exactly right. And of course, we'll talk about it more, but it depends on your party, at least if you want to vote for the Republicans, which is who we're mostly focused on in this conversation, because you have to be a registered Republican to vote for any of the Republican candidates, not so much for the other parties.
Yes, absolutely. Speaking of Republicans, Frankie, what political party or what kind of group controls the county commission right now?
Yeah, it's so fascinating because right now it is dominated by Republicans. All Republicans occupy those 3 seats currently. And that's generally how it's gone. You know, like we always talk about, Boise's this blue dot. And really, the blue dot bleeds into red really fast because you just get outside of the downtown core, north end, parts of the east end, and parts of the Bench, and it quickly becomes Republican, which is why, even though Boise is the largest city in Ada County, the county still votes overall Republican for the most part. However, there have been Democrats on the commission recently, like several years ago. Kendrick Kenyon was a Democrat on the commission. She did not run for re-election last time. And then Diana Lachiondo, people might remember her name. She was another recent Democrat on the commission who lost her seat in 2020 to one of the incumbents we're going to talk about later on.
And there's always a big focus on the big races. I mean, this is a presidential election year,
right.
You know, lots of focus on that. But I wanted to highlight that county commissioners are a local election that people really do need to pay attention to. They're in charge of a lot of really important local issues, especially a lot of the things that in my interactions with people that people complain about or say that they want to see fixed or changed.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the things that the county commissioners oversee?
You're so right. This time of in the election cycle is so fascinating because this primary, whoever makes it out of this Republican primary, will be on the ballot in November, and they'll have a lot of power potentially if they get elected in November. So the things like budgets for county services, including, Ada County Sheriff's Office. That's the largest segment of the commissioner's budget right now. Questions about our overflowing jail. What to do with our rapidly filling landfill. Do you hate long lines at the DMV? The Ada County commissioners have a role to play in that too. Most of the funding that the Ada County commissioners are, allocating comes from our property taxes. So if you not only if you own a house in Ada County, but if you rent a place in Ada County, you're contributing to the property tax base. And so they decide where that money should be spent, how it should be used. Issues that are massive: housing, growth, taxes, future of county properties like Expo, Idaho, and approval for lots of big projects, including right now, for example, there's this debate about a potential solar farm within the county, and the commissioners have been talking about that. So lots of day-to-day issues that affect people in their real lives.
Absolutely. And there's always lots of talk about like, what are my taxes doing for me?
Yes.
What are they doing? The county commissioners are in charge of a lot of that. So this is a race to keep track of. And because we live in Idaho, the primary is one of the most important parts of this race. Today, we're going to be focusing a lot on the Republican candidates because right now is primary season, and the GOP is the party that has several candidates running for those seats. But there are Democrats that are running, right, Frankie?
Yes, you will see 2 Democrats on the ballot for District 1, but one actually has dropped out. So that there's a name on the ballot that person has dropped out. Preston Fisher is his name, who's dropped out. So the one who's still running and that the Ada County Democrats are posting about on Facebook and telling people to vote for, his name's Jonathan Lashley. He will face whoever ends up winning on the Republican side in November. And then in District 3, Democrat Devin Gutierrez is on the ballot, and he comes from the education field. Lashley also comes from education from higher ed, and both are interested, as far as I can see, in like affordable housing. They're talking a lot about that, infrastructure investments. Both have never held elected office. And obviously, as you said, we'll have more information on these candidates because right now they're the only Democrats running. So their primary, that's why we're focusing on the Republicans, because the Republicans have a lot of candidates to choose from in this primary.
They sure do. And just a quick note, because I know this can be confusing, but in Idaho, the Republicans have a closed primary. So you have to be a registered Republican to vote for the Republicans in the primary. But the Democrats do not have a closed primary. So if you are an independent or Democrat and you want to vote for the Democrat candidate, you just request a Democratic ballot. But to vote Republican, you do have to be a registered Republican. So that's just an important distinction that I want everybody to know before you go vote. I don't want anyone to be surprised about that.
Hola.
Hello, this call is being translated.
Abuela, listen to what my phone can do.
Abuela, escucha lo que mi teléfono puede hacer.
¡Wow! Ahora dime sobre tu novia nueva.
Wow, now tell me about this new girlfriend.
Huh?
Tú sabes lo que dije.
You know what I said.
Language is no longer a barrier thanks to Live Translate with Galaxy AI on Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Learn more at Samsung.com. Samsung account login required. Calls must be made using the native Samsung dialer.
Here's a cool fact. A crocodile can't stick out its tongue. Another cool fact, you can get short-term health insurance for a month or just under a year in some states. United Healthcare short-term insurance plans are designed for people who are between jobs, coming off their parents' plan, or turning a side hustle into a full-time gig. Underwritten by Golden Rule Insurance Company, they offer flexible, budget-friendly coverage with access to a nationwide network of doctors and hospitals. Get more cool facts about United Healthcare short-term plans at uh1.com.
Frankie, let's jump in with District 1 incumbent Ryan Davidson. What have his priorities been as a county commissioner, and why is he running for a second term?
Yeah, of course. We're going to talk about one incumbent in this race and then another in District 3. It's always easier to talk about incumbents because we have a record to look to. But just to give a little bit of a background on his focus so far. So he was elected in 2020. He unseated Democrat Diana Lacciando during the midst of a lot of COVID backlash to mask mandates and things like that. Davidson, he says that he has more to accomplish, essentially, more things that he wants to get done for his 2-year term, this upcoming term, if he's elected. Expo Idaho is an example that he gives. People remember, if you've been around for a little while, that it used to be the horse race track, the old Les Bois horse race track that sat empty for years after the legislature banned racing. And so he was one of the commissioners to vote to turn that county property into a park that's supposed to open in 2026, and it's supposed to connect to the green belt. So a reimagining of this county property and what it could look like in the future. And he says he wants to be there to see that project to its conclusion.
Can you tell me a little bit more about his record in office over the last 4 years?
Yeah, as I mentioned, he came onto the commission in a wave of backlash against Democrats primarily and COVID measures. He was against mask mandates. He also voted to cut property taxes during a time when home values were skyrocketing, like 2021 during COVID. And so that's a big thing that he touts a lot. He also voted against continuing to help fund the rooms at the Red Lion in downtown Boise. That's where Interfaith Sanctuary, the homeless shelter, they were partnering with Ada County and the city of Boise during COVID to house medically fragile people. Of course, folks during COVID, that it was really, really dangerous for them to be out on the streets. And then all the people who we know became newly homeless during COVID, including a lot of families because of, getting laid off and all of the issues that came during COVID. So he was one of the commissioners on the current commission that said, no, we don't want to continue funding this. They did fund it for a while through federal dollars and then said, that's enough. City of Boise, you pick up the bill if you want to keep doing this.
And there's been a little controversy during this primary season with his endorsements, or who has previously endorsed him and maybe isn't endorsing him now. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, in particular, there's this one PAC, a political action committee called Conservative Citizens for Thoughtful Growth, and they endorsed Davidson in 2020, but they have not endorsed him this year. In fact, they have endorsed his opponent. So there are two Republicans going against each other in District 1, Ryan Davidson and Clyde Dornier. And this PAC, the Conservative Citizens for Thoughtful Growth, has switched allegiance and is now endorsing Dornier. And so that's kind of interesting to see that he's no longer has that endorsement. And if I can tell you a little bit about, Clyde Dornier, he is, a consultant, has a corporate background. He's big focus on public safety. On his website, he talks about wanting to reduce drug courts and basically finding ways for minor drug offenders to avoid jail. And he also is interested in really thinking about smart growth when it comes to these unincorporated parts of Ada County that, aren't a city yet, and then someday will become one. So this group is behind him instead of Davidson.
And this has caused some tension between Dornier and Davidson regarding Davidson's campaign signs, right?
Yeah. So this is interesting. So that PAC, when they endorsed Davidson in 2020, there was, on his yard signs, it said, endorsed by this PAC. Well, Davidson has been reusing those signs, which on the surface, it's like, oh, yeah, you can use the same sign. It's still your name and you're saying vote for me in the next election. But because that PAC is no longer supporting him, Dornier cried foul. He filed complaints to the Ada County Clerk's office. And Davidson said to the Idaho Statesman that, he just thought it was going off common sense to be able to reuse these signs. He didn't know that the PAC had switched their endorsement. So he then went on Facebook and told his supporters to kindly take those yard sales away. And as of, I don't know, I've seen online that some Dornier's campaign has said even after that they're still seeing some signs out there that still have that PAC's endorsement on it incorrectly. So that's kind of fascinating. I also want to note just really fast, Dornier does have other endorsements that are notable. Former Governor Butch Otter, Meridian Mayor Robert Simison. So seeing him get these endorsements from well-known establishment Republicans, and Simison being, of course, a mayor that the Ada County commissioners need to work with, I thought that was notable.
Yeah, no, those are some pretty heavyweight endorsements.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's jump into the District 3 race. And this district has 4 Republican candidates, including the incumbent Tom Daly. Can you tell us more about Daly as county commissioner, what he's done, what his focus has been?
Yeah. So a little bit of background. He before he was on the Ada County Commission, he served in the legislature for several years. He has said, he doesn't support, when we're talking about this question of tax cuts, right? Mm-hmm. And these Republicans who often are very interested in tax cuts, he says he doesn't support across the board cuts. He's definitely worried about taking funding away from the Ada County Sheriff's Office in particular. As far as what he's been focused on in office, he's been really, since he's in District 3, which is a very rural, so we're talking about places that, water infrastructure isn't necessarily there yet, right? Or they're building it or figuring out how to make sure that in the arid climate that is Boise, that there's enough water for people in these parts of Ada County that are unincorporated too. So he's been big on water. He wants to build a water info database and study kind of like wells a little bit differently or closer, aquifer studies, explore the question of flood water and how to divert it. So those are a couple of things he's been interested in.
Yeah, those are some pretty big issues that this area has been facing, or, especially with all this growth, like how do we manage water, which is pretty essential. And he has some endorsements to note as well. He's been endorsed by, again, mayors in Ada County. So the mayor of Star, Kuna, Eagle, and Meridian have all endorsed him, according to his Facebook page. And I should note, too, he also voted along with Davidson and Commissioner Rod Beck, who was not up for re-election this year, to not continue that funding for the Red Lion Shelter for medically fragile folks last year. No, thank you so much for noting that. One of his challengers is Sharon Ullman, who is no stranger to Ada County politics.
Yeah, it kind of feels like deja vu all over again. Sharon Ullman, she was on the commission twice in the early 2000s. In her second term, she lost in 2012 after she supported a very controversial project known as Dynamis. I reported on this a little bit in that era, so I remember how upset people were at that time. As a refresher, and for people who don't know what it was, this company called Dynamis Energy, they were given $2 million of county money to basically design a machine that they said would turn garbage at the county landfill. Because, side note, Boise doesn't have its own landfill. Boise garbage goes to the Ada County landfill. That's who manages the landfill. And Dynamis said that they would take this $2 million from the county and make this machine that would turn the garbage into gas, which would then generate electricity. Very interesting. I don't know. The project fell through. There were permitting obstacles, massive public backlash, and the county didn't get the money back, and they also had to pay millions in legal fees. So it's kind of interesting to see her back, and she won the Republican primary. She ran also in 2018. She won the Republican primary then, but lost in the general to the Democrat. So she's back again this year.
What policies and positions is she campaigning on now?
Yeah, she thinks spending is out of control and that she's primarily not blaming her fellow Republicans, but blaming the Democrats, although Democrats haven't been on the commission for a couple of years.
I say that the Democrats that aren't on the commission?
Yeah, kind of interesting. She's very critical of the county coroner's new facility, how much it costs the county. She wants to, when it comes to the jail and the issues of overcrowding in the jail, her suggestion is to transfer inmates from the jail. And she says that to the Idaho State Corrections, and she says that the jail bond that failed last year, she said that the timing was wrong for that, and maybe if to try it again, to do it a different way. She also told the Idaho Statesman that the county shouldn't spend public money on things that promote growth, which I thought was interesting. She mentioned in an interview with them or a survey with them that we'll link in the show notes, accessory dwelling units as like a possible help to dealing with our growth and our affordable housing crisis.
Interesting. Another candidate for the District 3 seat is Brandon Durst, and people might recognize his name from when he was a Democratic Idaho legislator who moved to Washington, switched parties, becoming a Republican, and recently he was working with the Idaho Freedom Foundation, and within the last year, he was embroiled in some controversy with the West Bonner School District. Just a little bit of background. He was hired as superintendent, but resigned after parents and families in West Bonner School District had a successful recall election. And then the Idaho Department of Education released a statement saying he didn't meet the qualifications to be a superintendent in the state of Idaho. So now he's back in the Treasure Valley and running in this election.
According to his website, he says his very conservative Christian values are a big part of the reason why he's running. He talks about being a parent to school-aged children as being a perspective that the commission should have. And in an answer to the Idaho Statesman, he talks about not wanting Ada County to go the way of metros in Washington and Oregon and Colorado, alluding to, essentially that in these other more liberal states that the major cities' liberal politics influence the state too much. So that's what he's talking about so far.
Interesting. Has he talked about any policy goals that he has?
Yeah, his website really makes very clear that his number one priority is to, quote, combat Biden's border crisis, which, of course, is fascinating to see an Ada County Commission candidate take a national issue that has been a dog whistle for a lot of people and is also just, very polarizing and apply it to local politics in this way. I think that's interesting.
Yeah. As a border state with Canada, that is definitely a huge issue for Boise. These border crisis issues we have with Canada, definitely an appropriate, policy goal.
Yeah, I know he's referring to the southern border, but it is confusing that we are not on the southern border. He does, what he says about that, to go into detail about, that's the headline, and then you read the full paragraph, and it's quote, he wants to direct Ada County to enforce federal immigration laws, especially against violent offenders, fentanyl drug dealers, and bad actor employers, unquote. He also talks about lowering property taxes and cutting government by, quote, at least 5%. Doesn't go into detail about how he would do that or what he would cut exactly, but yeah.
Okay, well, we've got a specific number at least.
Yes.
5%.
That's the target, yeah.
Okay, so the fourth and final candidate that we'll be discussing in this Republican race is Heather Luther. What's her platform?
Yeah, so Heather Luther, she works for the county already. So she's already working for Ada County. She's the director of the recorder's office, handling things like land records and licensing. I'm just say her age. She's 35. She's the youngest Republican running in these races, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is definitely notable. How is she working to differentiate herself from all the other candidates in this kind of tightly packed race?
Yeah, she also is the only Republican for District 3 that hasn't held public office. So she's saying that out loud and saying this is actually a good thing, that I've never been elected, but I know the inner workings of the county because of my position. She talks a lot about smart growth, quote unquote smart growth, and addressing infrastructure like roads, water resources. She mentions public transit on her website, which I thought was interesting, given that the city of Boise pays the majority of the money toward Valley Regional Transit, the bus system, with the state not participating and funding it at all. So kind of curious to hear more from her potentially if she makes it through the primary about what that would actually look like. And those are kind of her main things, but kind of taking her inside knowledge of how the county works and applying it to potentially an elected position.
Yeah, that would be really fascinating to see, if she got elected, the relationship between the county and the city of Boise when it came to transit. That could be
I'm curious.
Potentially really helpful for people.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that people need to know about voting for the Ada County commissioners in this primary or about this election specifically?
Yeah, you already did a great job of mentioning the element. If you want to vote for any of these Republicans, you have to be a registered Republican. We have, we'll put in the show notes even more information about some of their positions. The Idaho Statesman, I've mentioned them a couple times. They did a great job of asking the same questions of all the candidates so you can compare their answers. Idaho Press did a write-up about the District 3 candidates too. We'll link to that. And then, as far as like how to actually vote, early in-person voting continues until Friday the 17th. So that deadline's coming up. And you can early vote at city halls in Boise, Eagle, Meridian. Lindsay, I think you already voted, right? Where did you vote?
Oh yeah, Meridian City Hall.
Yeah, you're a big early voter girl.
Yeah, I love it. Get it done, so I'm not stressed about it.
Yep, get your sticker, have it early. And you can also, this is interesting, and I think lots of people know, but maybe some don't. You can view your ballot in advance through the Ada County website. So you don't have to, be nervous about going into the voting booth and not knowing the options. You can study it before you go and then be prepared to know what your plan is. And then we'll put a link in the show notes to figure out, like, if you want to vote on the 21st, which is the primary day, next Tuesday, we'll put a link in the show notes for you to be able to figure out which is your polling place and how you can get registered, because you can still register to vote even day of.
Yes, good reminder. Yeah, it's not too late. You can still register to vote. Thank you so much, Frankie.
Thanks, Lindsay.
That's all for today here on City Cast Boise. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe to our Hey Boise newsletter for even more election coverage. We'll be back tomorrow morning with another local story from around the city. See you then.